We all come from some sort of background in which we have been subconsciously programmed and may not even know it, based off of the house we grew up in or some sort of trauma we've experienced in our childhood or in our past, things that we're not even aware of, that we've picked up along the way, typically based off of some sort of fear, whether it be drugs, alcohol, molestation, religious backgrounds, coming from poverty, or having everything you could ever dream of except for connection with parents. So the abandonment issues and fear of not being good enough or being accepted into society. Then we carry these things out of our adolescence into our teenage years as we're developing and just learning sort of how to interact with the big world and society and workplaces and extracurricular activities, whether it be sports or skateboarding or whatever it may be, after school activities. And we start developing this programming of what our world is or what we think it looks like, based off of our own experience. As we grow older and we don't address some of these issues, especially if they've been traumatic in our past, a lot of people don't even know that they may have suffered from some sort of trauma. Those fear-driven defects of character gear us toward how we interact with society as an adult, what kind of jobs we have, how we interact with them, how we interact with people on social media. It really shows in politics as well, because we all come from different experiences. We struggle with not understanding why someone doesn't see our point of view. In fact, because of the traumatic experiences we've dealt with in the past, it gets a rise out of us, and it's typically out of anger or fear of not being accepted, and we don't even know it. And then we become chaotic, and then we start attracting chaos, and then the whole world doesn't understand. We're divided at that point, even if it's just one simple idea. If we do the work on ourselves with the help of a therapist or someone who's been through the traumatic experiences, that have dealt with it properly and that are well balanced, and that do personal inventory, that practice self-care, self-love, self-acceptance, and that are out there helping other people. There's a lot of these places out there support group wise, but we're so driven by fear and perplexed by it, and we're so caught up in the moment and chaotic that we don't even know to seek help. So I've been in recovery for many, many years, and doing the work, peeling the layers of the onion back, so they call it, or as they call it. And what I've found is it's the little bitty things that trip me up. I have defects of character that I have perfected since childhood, that I've carried through the years with me, and make a lot of decisions today, emotional decisions, rash decisions, fear-based decisions, based off of those character defects that I've perfected. The main difference today is that it doesn't take me 10 years to realize it. Once I know, it might take 6 months this time, and then or the first time. It might take 3 months the second time. And then if I keep doing the work on myself, then I can, hopefully the idea is, if I'm balanced out, or if I'm doing the work on myself, holding myself accountable, and I've got good, healthy people around me to hold me accountable, then I can identify it quicker. Ideally on the spot. I don't hold myself to perfection, but I do hold myself accountable, and I do have to go right my wrongs as long as it doesn't cause more harm. So the more I do the work, the better results I get, the less people I harm, the less chaotic I am, the more I'm accepting and loving to other people. And I'm no longer separated or isolated from the group, that we make up. So we're not as unique as we would like to think that we are. We all are driven by the same fear. It might have a slight spin on it. It might be a few layers deeper in the subconscious. There might be a few things stacked above it. But when we get down to brass tacks and we do the work, then we're not that unique. We have talents and we have skills and we have different ideas based off of, our own personalities. But brass tacks, we're not that different. So we all do come from different worlds, and we all live in, different worlds. But I think it's important that we don't continue to go through life with this subconscious or psychological thinking of the world that I come from is the only one and that no one's going to understand. That's a big idea to carry through the day, on a daily basis, and not hold yourself to perfection, not hold other people to perfection. It's a lot easier for us to try to hold someone accountable and to perfection and tell them how they should act, what they should say, how they should say it, who they should interact with, what kind of language they could speak, versus taking a look inside. That's a lot of that stuff is projection. And we project those ideas out onto other people and we don't even know it. So the more you hate someone, it's probably a projection of yourself. Some situation that you may have not addressed, or that you're scared or don't know how, and anger comes from not understanding. When we don't understand something or someone or why they think the way they do, we get angry because we haven't figured it out. If we haven't figured it out, chances are we haven't done the work. Simple as that. It's a lot easier said than done. I got sober in 2012, got a sponsor in 2013, and ever since then, it's 2019, almost 2020 today, and I've been doing the work on myself and with another person that's been through it, and it's been a journey. And you can call it recovering from drugs and alcohol. Yeah, like that's the first thing you address in recovery. But there are deep-seated resentments and some deep-seated issues and a lot of trauma that cause us to drink, cause us to drug, cause us to harm people, create a life of fear-driven motives, ambitions that I've addressed. The past almost 7 years now. So the plot thickens constantly. The plot is constantly thickening. And I woke up today and I thought about the world that I come from and how I could use that world to create a better world for others and be more understanding, be more open-minded, be more compassionate, show more empathy. And it's a struggle. When you know the answers to a lot of things and you see people suffering, it can be a gift and a curse. And the other side of that, sort of a narcissistic side, is that you know people's weaknesses. And with every spiritual awakening, eventually you will have to get to a point of some sort of narcissism, because you will have to, you will eventually have to get there to address all of your stuff. When you reach into a point of narcissism, it's not to stay there eternally. It's to, it's kind of it kind of shows you that you stop looking at everyone else, pointing the finger, blaming, judging, thinking about them and all that they think about you, and the ego, sort of the egomaniac inferiority complex. I'm too good and not good enough at the same time. So once you kind of work through a lot of that, this is just my experience, but once I worked through a lot of that, I did reach a certain point of narcissistic behavior. I recently watched a documentary on spiritual awakenings. I watch a lot of them. I can't tell you which one it was, but they was talking about you do reach a level of narcissistic behavior within a spiritual awakening, because then you're at that point to where you've addressed some certain issues, and now it's time to address the issues within, the psychology behind your thinking, the reasoning why, some other issues that might not be so suppressed. And belief systems should change as you awaken spiritually, and you should be able to sort of hold yourself accountable and think about yourself a little bit more, but in a healthier way versus a self-pity mindset. I heard about 2 years ago in a lecture from Ram Dass, and he's talking about using drugs and LSD and most importantly people as vehicles to get there. Now I use drugs and alcohol on people and women and myself, my family, certain situations, jobs, opportunities. I used all of that to try and get there. And I don't even know where there is. As many drugs and as much alcohol and as much, as many women and running around and spending money, making money, and all these outside materialistic things could never get me there. And it caused a lot of trauma throughout my life, and created a lot of trauma for other people, I'm sure. So, once I sobered up and really started addressing some of these issues, working through trauma and working through addiction and seeing where things have made my life unmanageable, and coming to believe that, something else, power greater than myself, could ideally get me through it. I had no idea what that even meant at the time. Taking personal inventory, taking a look at myself and the exact nature of my wrongs. No matter how thin we try to slice the pie, there's always two sides. There's always two sides. And then taking a look at the character defects and resentments and making amends. And I heard a lady share one time about the character defects that she'd perfected throughout her entire life, and a lot of it was based on the household she grew up in, and then she carried those things on. And those aren't always bad things. They could be good things as well, but we carry them throughout our lives. So the idea with this documentary, The World We Come From, is to shine some light on that exact topic, how it works against us and for us at the same time. If we address some of the psychological, emotional, physical, mental, spiritual ideas in our lives, then we can become better people. Not to hold ourselves to perfection. Typically, a lot of us don't really anyways. We want to hold other people to perfection. It's easier that way, especially if we don't know the answers. That will fix us. Something magical happens when we work through trauma, whether it be through good sponsorship, through a therapist, practicing yoga, doing the things that we love, creating art, addressing some of these issues in healthy manners. We start to connect the head with the heart, so to speak. We start opening up, and one of the major things that has helped me is going back and righting my wrongs and making amends to people that I have harmed, and a lot of these people I felt had harmed me originally. And I had to take a look at some of those situations because I played a role in it some way, shape, or form. If it was a situation that I was powerless over, my part was I carried that resentment throughout the years, and those ideas that carried these fear-driven ambitions and motives, how I treat people, how I view others, fear of not being accepted, fear of getting hurt. So my part is how I continued to carry on the experience and projecting it on other people. So once I started working through some of that stuff and started learning to forgive others by looking at my part in it, no matter how big or small, sort of righting my wrongs to people and to society, my life started getting better. I wasn't hidden in the guilt, shame, and remorse of it all. Yeah, I'm guilty because I did it. But shame is the lie. Shame tells me that, that no one's going to understand, I'm not good enough, that I can't do it because I tried it, 15 years ago and it didn't work out. These programmed ideas that we have to break through somehow, and it does require some sort of higher level of conscience. Einstein has a quote where he says, "A problem cannot be solved by the same level of consciousness that created it." That is one of my favorite quotes, to always do a spot check inventory on myself. I gotta always raise my level of conscious. Always have to work towards raising my vibration so I can always look at new situations and old situations from a newer set of eyes. A newer heart, a newer mind, a newer level of consciousness, a better way of thinking, a different psychological viewpoint, a different emotional viewpoint, because I'm always changing. Life is always changing, and these ideas we get locked into don't. So we're stuck, on a low vibrational level. And it's important to always take a look at myself, always work on myself, so I'm not projecting out into the world. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I am getting better. But the more we address, the past, the better we can handle the future. The higher level of consciousness we raise to, the more our belief systems change, and the better we are. Our world isn't our cage, so to speak. It flourishes, it blooms, it becomes a safe space for people to come into, and we start to be able to allow and create this safe space for others to bloom and to flourish and to grow, and for their vibrations to be raised as well, for new ideas to come from them. And because of that, your ideas and your level of consciousness continue to grow as well. And that's when you're really onto something. I feel like I'm really onto something the past few years. Creating safe space for people. A lot of people on social media, on Facebook, whatnot, and this rings true across the board. A lot of people don't know me, so they project and they think I mean something, and from their point of view, when they don't actually know who Alan is. And the world we come from is our cage, is our trap. So we have to sort of do the work on ourselves and raise our vibrations up and address some of this trauma so our thinking changes, and constantly try to stay connected to a power greater than myself. Stay teachable. Always add to, whether it's, Buddhist teachings, whether it's Jesus, whether it's some sort of doctrine that that's moral, something holy that will allow you to live a good moral life and add it to your life. You don't have to subscribe to it. You don't have to subscribe to someone else's idea of what that is. It's a personal relationship. It's personal to you and the world that you come from, not someone else's. We put ourselves in a box on everything and put up boundaries and barriers and walls, and we build them tough, and we build them strong, and we build them sturdy, and we have problems tearing them down because we built them. So, in a sense, we've trapped ourselves within this world that we come from, or that we think we come from, and we won't let anyone in, or we obviously can't get out without the power of something else. Working on your spirituality, whether it's prayer, meditation, yoga, church, scripture, whatever it may be, get some sort of spiritual leader and be a student. Stay teachable. Referencing back to the Einstein quote, like, how else would you raise yourself to a higher level of consciousness if you're not a student? If you're just the teacher and you're not, teaching anyone or discipling anyone or trying to help people, or showing up, doing service work, those sort of things. My spiritual practices are what works for me. I'm always adding to my spiritual practices. I was blessed enough to grow up into a home to where there were no forced doctrines. My first experience with that sort of suggestion on the connection was through recovery. It started out with come to believe in a power greater than yourself. And they said, pray and meditate. I thought, that is so weird. It scared me. It was an idea that scared me. I was living in a halfway house at the time, and I remember going into the stall in the bathroom and sitting on the toilet because I was scared to pray in my little room, and someone might walk in because I thought maybe I was doing it wrong. And of course, I've had the prayers that, in the past of, God help me, help me. Those prayers when, without the connection and something switches and we go back to our, primal instincts of calling out to something outside of us, outside of our thinking, like, our best thinking got us in that certain situation. And there's something that happens that says, reach out, call out, which is really the one job, which is really our primary purpose on this earth, in creation. Sort of reach outside of ourselves and attach or connect to something greater than ourselves. So I've had those prayers, but I do remember sitting on that toilet thinking, I don't know how to pray. I don't know how to meditate. You hear it all the time. My brain runs too fast. I can't stop. I can't think about one thing long enough to meditate. Well, it's a paradox. The more you do it, the more you do it. The more you pray, the more capable you are of praying. The more you meditate, the more capable you are of meditation. A lot of the problem is the standards we hold ourselves up to when we go to do these things. We hold ourselves to perfection. I'm supposed to be able to do it perfect, like the Buddhist. I think there's a reason why the gurus and people run off to the Himalayas. There's no distractions. So maybe that's their way of trying to get better at it. But in that act of saying things like, my mind runs too much, I can't meditate, there's a sense of like beating ourselves to death in that sentence. because we're not even giving ourselves a chance. When a thought comes across in prayer meditation, that is still you, and you should love that thought until it goes away. That is part of you. If you start beating it up and thinking, man, I'm supposed to be, do this right, really what you're doing is you're beating yourself up. And if you're beating yourself up, then chances are you're beating people up around you as well and not even knowing it. So give yourself a break. We're allowed to have bad days. We're allowed to have bad meditations and not know what to pray about. We're allowed to not be able to meditate all the time and not have the words to say to pray. The fact is I don't even know what I want or know what I need. And if I thought I did, I would be shortchanging myself. That's why it's so important to stay connected and pull in the answers, to level up consciously, to raise the vibration, to break through psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, and create new ideas about yourself, about others, about the world, and sort of tear down those walls that we built. The two most powerful prayers I've said in my life are help me and thank you. Those two prayers changed my life. I probably say them multiple times a day to this day. Every day. Because as soon as I say amen, I start walking away. I start walking away from God, or the God of my own understanding. And that some of that old thinking starts to creep back in. And I gotta check back in later. I gotta add meditation. I heard one time that prayer was talking to God and meditation's listening. And we don't live in a monologue world, we live in a dialogue world. So it's important to sort of create this dialogue, a conversation with something greater than yourself. If a friend called you up and you're on the phone and they're just talk, and you're not able to say anything, you're just supposed to listen, well, that's not a very interesting conversation, and we're not going to get a lot accomplished. But if it's a dialogue, if it's talking and listening, we can go a lot further. That's the same way I look at my connection with the God of my understanding, which I love Jesus. I love Scripture. I love that textbook. I can always refer to it. It's something on paper to hold myself accountable, and it's something to get me through hard times. It's the very first thing that ever taught me about grace, mercy, and forgiveness, which were valuable, probably the most important things I could have ever learned when I was working on myself through recovering from a lot of trauma and drugs and alcohol, because I was my worst critic. I beat myself to death because I didn't know a way out. And I found the way out. I found the love that I was searching for, and it was within me. The grace, the mercy, and forgiveness, and it started to become guidelines for myself. And then I started projecting that stuff on other people. Then I started learning how to show grace, show mercy, show forgiveness to my brothers and sisters. The example of love that was given to me, I'm able to give it to other people. Because I have the textbook, it's right there. It's not nothing that I've created in my mind where I can sort of co-sign my own actions. It's there, and it holds me accountable. And because I know it's there, because I follow the text, then I know that I'm doing right or wrong. I know what I can do to sort of break through that cycle or get out of that pattern or ask for help. Now I know who to lean on. I know who my teacher is. And it's a very, very liberating idea. It's a very, very liberating relationship. I mean, it's everything to me. And then I add things like Buddhist proverbs to it. I stay teachable. I add yoga to it. I take Jesus to the yoga mat. When I set my intentions, when I set my intentions in yoga, it's a direct reflection of how my relationship can be better with Him. That is the measure. That's the bar. How close am I? To being the best person I could possibly be. Always add to. Always raise the level of consciousness. From the level of consciousness that's creating the problems. Always raise the level of consciousness by adding to your life. It's continuous work. The road to recovery is under constant construction. And a lot of us are recovering from a lot of different things. The world we come from. It's a great question. It's something I've been thinking about for quite some time. And in the midst of thinking about it, realized that I've already been doing it for quite some time. And that is creating a safe space around me with healthy boundaries in place for myself. Not boundaries that are going to keep people out, but healthy boundaries for myself to allow a safe space around me for others to come in and be able to accept help and be able to help other people as well. Most importantly, to allow others to grow spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, consciously, to create this vibration in this safe space to where others can find balance. If they're at a low vibrational point in their life, then it will perhaps raise their vibration. Or if their vibration's higher than mine, perhaps mine will be raised, and I will open up and accept some new ideas about myself, about other people, try to break through some of the walls and the barriers and the ideas and the programming that I've set upon myself. There's one idea that I've been realizing the past year is comfort in knowing that no matter where I'm at, there's always someone else out there to balance me out. I may not know who they are, I've never met them, they may be on the other side of the world, but the universe will always create balance. So in areas that I'm at peace with myself and others, there may be someone that is chaotic with themselves in that same area, and vice versa, where I'm addressing issues that may trigger me or that I'm chaotic. Know that the universe is creating balance with someone else that's not. And that's a shot of hope. And I find comfort in that. You see people that are pretty radical and chaotic mentally and believe in their beliefs, and there's comfort in knowing, me personally, that there's someone out there to balance them out. And that allows me to have faith, to move forward, to not get so involved in other people's lives, trying to control, and just know that someone out there is balancing out that person, and myself included, and that there's something a lot bigger going on here, and that I need to focus on my path. And I'm so far out into the unknown from what I thought life was and shortchanging myself that I have to live in faith. because that's what got me here. I have to continue to walk in faith, far, far out into the great unknown, because the universe, God, Jesus, whatever it may be, my source of power has a plan, has a direction. And Alan is the one who gets off track. I often refer to myself as the one of the 99, and you'll hear about it in the Bible. There's a shepherd and he has 100 sheep. And there's one that gets away, runs off all the time. And the other 99 kind of stay together. They're good, they're in a herd, and you don't have to worry about them. Yet he still goes after the one of the 99 to save him, to help him, to bring him back, to put him back on the path, and to lead him in the direction that he wants them to go. So that's my mentality every day. Every day. I don't hold myself to perfection, but I have to constantly go back and check in from walking away from the amen and the prayer that I said earlier this morning, and realize and find comfort in knowing that I don't have to control things. And we can control things with good intentions and not even know it. My teacher sponsor told me last year, he said, one of your biggest problems is that you think your good ideas are good for everyone. And it hit me, it sort of hit me, and I'm like, man, some chunks of truth in that. Because even with good ideas and good intentions, there's still some sort of control factor in there, psychologically. If they would do this, then my world would be okay. And then I would be able to do what I really want to do. And it's deep down in there, but it's there. It's good to know it's there. So these are things I think about every day. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. It's like a form of narcissism or narcissistic thinking. Like, it's kind of a must at certain times. Not in a manner to where you're not moral about it, or your ambitions and your motives are jacked, but at some point you have to start thinking about yourself to break through levels of consciousness, to dissolve karma, to collapse timelines, and get through some of this generational stuff that we're living in, so we don't carry it on down the road. I had some really good values instilled in me from a child. So yeah, it would be safe to say the world that I'm trying to create is a safe one, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, to allow other people to grow. So therefore I can grow. How can I create balance? How can I be the balance? That's what I'm trying to get to. How can I be the balance? And I don't do it perfect, because I've lived a life. I have this life and this programming and these things that define me, and these character defects that I've perfected, that I always have to take a look at. The world I come from doesn't define me. The world I come from liberates me, because I continued to do the work along the way. And only I have that experience. So I use it to create a new world for myself, constantly. Death, rebirth, transformation. Constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly challenging myself. Always fighting complacency. Creating a safe space for other people.